Now, for the first time in history, swept-wing fighters with jet engines slug it out at extreme altitudes and near supersonic speeds. American F-86 Sabres head-to-head against the communist MiGs. Their contrails will write a new chapter in the annals of air warfare in a place called MiG Alley. Experience the battle, dissect the tactics, relive the dogfights. 2 years earlier, on June 25, 1950, the North Korean People's Army swarmed across the 38th parallel, the dividing line between the Communist North and the Republic of South Korea. U.S. armed forces, under United Nations auspices, are committed to the fight. The North Koreans have the manpower and tanks, but their primitive air force is quickly shot to ribbons. American aircraft are free to roam the skies. Communist troop concentrations and supply lines are relentlessly pounded from the air.
It had a great effect because we were able in a lot of circumstances to either curtail or certainly decrease the amount of enemy army activity.
But then, in November 1950, the Americans are stunned by the appearance of new Soviet-built MiG-15 jet fighters. With a top speed of 670 miles per hour, the MiG is 100 miles per hour faster than older F-80 and F-84 jets in Korea. The critical air supremacy achieved early in the war is now in jeopardy.
The MiG was built as a point interceptor. It was light, it had a lighter wing loading, and it didn't carry as much fuel, which limited the range, but made it very good for climbing purposes and turning purposes.
It was optimized to shoot down B-29s. That's why it had the heavy cannon armament that it did, 223 millimeters and a 37 millimeter.
The cannon was really a surprising weapon. If the guy was within about 700 or 800 feet behind you and he fired it, you could feel the vibration with your rudder pedals. When that happened to you, you knew you better do something pretty quick, left or right, but don't stay where you are.
The MiG-15s dash from bases in China, just across the North Korean border. Any aircraft venturing into a 6,000 square mile slice of airspace above northwest Korea is vulnerable. American airmen call it MiG Alley. It is here that the fiercest air battles of the Korean War will be etched across the cold blue sky. The U.S. Air Force rushes the 4th Fighter Interceptor Wing to Korea. The 4th is equipped with the new F-86A Sabre jet. It is the only airplane in the Western arsenal that approaches the MiG's capabilities.
The F-86 was my very favorite plane that I've ever flown.
The F-86 was a pure fighter. It was not intended to intercept or shoot down enemy bombers, but it was meant to take on enemy fighters, destroy them, and achieve air superiority.
The Sabre is a strong, maneuverable, and stable gun platform, the very qualities needed in a good fighter aircraft. F-86s launched their first combat air patrols into MiG Alley in December 1950. Captain Bruce Hinton takes first blood for the Sabre on December 17. The F-86s do well. But there are 400 MiGs based across the Yalu. In 1950, there are fewer than 50 Sabres in Korea. Even though outnumbered, the experience and esprit of the Sabre pilots makes the critical difference in MiG Alley. August 5, 1952. 4 U.S. Air Force F-86 Sabres move into the hostile skies of MiG Alley above northwest Korea. For over 2 years, nimble Russian-built MiG-15 fighters have been darting from sanctuaries in China, challenging American bombers and fighters. The Sabre flight is led by Captain Robinson Reisner. His mission is to find the MiGs and kill them. All eyes are outside the cockpit, scanning, searching for a contrail, a telltale flash of metal. Suddenly, there they are. 8 silver MiGs passing left to right, 1,000 feet below. Perfect setup. Too perfect.
I can still remember seeing those MiGs below me. That was unusual. Anytime you saw MiGs below you, it was an exciting thing, but we learned quickly to suspect the situation.
Reisner instinctively calls check 6. His wingman responds. Lead, we've got MiGs at 3 o'clock. 6 MiGs scream in from overhead, lethal cannon flashing. The Sabres are in a trap. Now they are the prey. Reisner calls a right brake. The Sabres stand on one wing, pull hard around. Neck muscles strain to keep heads upright against the heavy pull of G. The Sabres turn into the face of the enemy. Reisner is screaming headlong into his first life and death encounter. The MiGs are higher and have the speed advantage. If the Sabres continue straight and level, they present broadside targets to the MiGs. If they turn left, the MiGs will attack from the rear. Reisner's only option is to turn directly into the attackers, presenting a smaller cross-section while forcing the MiGs to overshoot. Reisner calls a hard break into the MiGs.
Being a typical fighter pilot, flying that wonderful F-86, we weren't really concerned about these guys. We didn't want them to hit us, though. So we broke into them, made a high G turn into them.
The abrupt maneuver derails the ambush. 2 MiGs overshoot and streak by. The F-86s reverse. As the MiGs dive at the Americans, the Sabres make a hard climbing turn directly into them. The MiGs overshoot. The Sabres then reverse their direction, putting them on their attackers' 6 o'clock. The tables have turned within seconds, the hallmark of jet-age combat in MiG Alley.
I took Paley and Charlie because he's the closest one to me. And I put the pepper on the tailpipe, pulled the triggers. He lit up like a Christmas tree.
Called MiG